Okay, this is a recorded interview with Beverly Bell, who has been working on the story of the recently killed Berta Caceres. Am I saying her name right, Beverly?
Caceres.
Caceres. The Honduran environmental activist who was just assassinated, and she knew that, and most people knew that she was going to be targeted. Talk about how you know about this story, Beverly.
Well, it's not actually a story for me. I know about it because I have worked very closely and been very dear friends with Berta Caceres for about 15 years.
Wow.
She is, I'll speak in present tense. I can't bring myself to speak in past. She's very alive for me and always will be. Berta is the co-founder of the amazing, remarkable organization of hundreds of thousands of Lenca indigenous peoples in Honduras and of campesinos, small farmers, called the Convergence of Popular and Indigenous Organizations of Honduras, or COPIN for short. The organization is about 20 years old, and Berta has been the spiritual and political leader all the way along. And her assassination was not a surprise. No, we have always known that this is not a woman who was going to die of old age. She has been targeted by the government over and over and over. I could never begin to count the number of death threats, the number of acts of persecution, of attempted kidnapping, of charges for sedition, of house break-ins that she has lived through. And she never backed off what she was doing. She continued to work very, very hard at the cause. And the cause was helping to build participatory democracy in Honduras, helping to strengthen the rights of those who were normally excluded, including LGBT people, low-income women, small farmers, as I mentioned, and notably Lenca indigenous people. I hear you call her an environmental activist. She is that. She stood very strongly for Pachamama, for Mother Earth, and was working along with the members of COPIN, working very strongly to protect their lands from something like 45 plans by multinational corporations to put dams in up and down their ancestral rivers. They have stopped dozens of forest projects that were to be illegally done on their land. They have won communal titling for indigenous lands. I believe they're the first people in Honduras to ever get communal titling. They have just won so much under Berta's leadership, but I should say leadership which she always devolves back to the base, sharing power. And she is not only a leader in Honduras and not only a leader of indigenous peoples, but has become a social movement leader from all over the world. When the news went out about her death 2 days ago, she, or I rather, in my inbox must have gotten denunciations and condolences from, I don't know, dozens of countries, dozens, from Argentina to South Africa, because Berta's reach was that large. So it is a complete tragedy, and now there are two other people who are in jail, those targeted by the government. One is a man named Aureliano Molina, who is the number 2 person in COPIN. And so the government is going to try and get rid of him, as well as Berta. They have arrested him on suspicion of having killed her as a, quote, crime of passion. And the other person who is still in jail is Gustavo Castro, who runs the economic justice organization Otros Mundos, Other Worlds in Spanish, in Chiapas, Mexico. And Gustavo was actually at Berta's house doing peacekeeping the night of her murder, and he saw the whole thing. He's the sole witness. He himself was shot twice, and as the witness, he has been taken into custody by the government of Honduras, allegedly to give his testimony, but he has now been held for 3 days. And he is very inconvenient to the government. They would love to kill him. I just got a letter from him last night, an email saying that he is not out of danger. He still has to leave the area. And he, like Berta before, his life dangles by a thread. So that's where we're at today. And we are looking at the future of Copine, which is now under even graver threat than it has been in the past, because the government now thinks that if they've gotten rid of the fearless leader, that they can go after the others. But the organization is strong, and it is not going to go quietly into the night.
Can you talk a little bit about sort of the history of Honduras and like what's been going on there? You mentioned the oppression of LGBT women and farmers. And so, like, what is it the government of Honduras that's been doing these things?
Yes, the government of Honduras, hand in hand with multinational transnationals, as well as the backing of the United States government. Okay. So the most recent history is that there was a democratically elected government under President Manuel Zelaya, and he was ousted. Actually, I'm hearing a horrible echo.
Are you still hearing an echo?
No, it just stopped for some reason.
Okay.
President Manuel Zelaya was ousted in a coup d'etat that was led by the U.S., notably Hillary Clinton. She actually bragged in her most recent book that she played a key role in it. And part of the reason for the coup was that the government of Zelaya was showing itself open to the land reform that Copine and others were pushing forward on. This freaked out the oligarchy, it freaked out the government, it freaked out the U.S., of course, and so they set about getting rid of this opening. And so that meant not only getting rid of the democratically elected government, it also meant cracking down on popular organizations, because Honduras has very strong popular women worker organizations. So the coup took place, and since that time there have been a series of very horribly vicious right-wing governments that have been put into place by fraudulent elections, which the U.S. certifies as legitimate time after time.
Yep. So Hillary Clinton is proudly displaying this in her book. You're saying her participation in this coup.
Yes, she was the prominent person involved in the coup. It was interesting to watch what happened right after the coup. She came out and condemned it, called it a coup d'état, used those words, and then kept backtracking such that 2 months later she actually said that what was going on in Honduras was, quote, murky. So, they have given the green light for the sacking of indigenous lands, for mines, for dams, for logging, and all sorts of other investment that violates the rights of Honduran citizens. And I will point out that both the Honduran Constitution and also Convention 169 of the International Labor Organization, to which Honduras is a signatory, give the right to free, prior, and informed consent of indigenous peoples before anything can be developed on their land. And of course, this is being violated all over. The land is being stolen. And these projects, these profit-bearing projects, are just plowing forward with the help of the U.S.
How is the U.S. helping? You said, the U.S. government, the military?
Yes, it's both military and political support. So this past year, the U.S. gave $5.5 million in military support. Mind you, this is for a country that is not at war and is not expected to go to war except against its own people. And even though that amount may not seem huge, there's a lot that the Honduran military can do with that. For all we know, U.S. taxpayers bought the bullet that killed Berta. We have no idea. Also, the U.S. has supported the Honduran government politically very, very strongly. Again, beginning in 2009, after Zelaya was overthrown, they have stood by the government and given it strong backing. And then another way that the U.S. is complicit is through the training by the School of the Americas Watch of a lot of these thugs who masquerade as soldiers, who are just killers paid by the government, really. And the U.S. has blood all over its hands on this, including specifically on Berta's death.
Phew. I just wanted to mention that this Monday at Strand Books in New York, I bring him up often, John Perkins, who wrote Confessions of an Economic Hitman, because it's his book and his writings and speaking that tries to educate people about the very thing that you're speaking about now, because this is exactly what the U.S. does. It just takes over the resources of other countries, puts the people into debt, making a few rich people richer. I think it's getting worse now. Because of course, they just gonna take people out, anybody that gets in their way. And a lot of what you're saying is happening in this country also, with the privatization and the for-profit justice system, the police department. There is nothing standing in the way, other than people like Berta and her organization and the people that are fighting with her, to stand up to corporate profit.
Well, but those people are in countries all over the world, including the U.S., and that is why we just need to continue to organize and to speak out and to keep the press free, as you are doing, and to educate ourselves and to act, because without us, without the voice of organized people, we have no chance in hell.
I wanted to refer to, you had said more than anything, this is about continued U.S. and Honduran government support for land and river grabs and multinational investment.
Yes, that's correct.
You also said Berta likes to say that Honduras is known only for having been a Contra base and for Hurricane Mitch, but that country also hosts a powerful social movement which has taken on unaccountable government, multinational corporations, and oligarchy run amok, and U.S. military domination. For 15 years, Bell has been a close collaborator. Oh, right, that's you. Beverly, you've been a close collaborator with Berta and the group that she coordinates, the National Council of Indigenous Organizations of Honduras, and you've repeatedly warned that Caceres and other indigenous activists were in danger because of their work. What do you see, happening? So people continuously need to stand up and fight, but they need reinforcement, because exactly, the corporations and the military are they're not going to stop.
Right. So I feel, as a person from the U.S., that what is needed more than anything in the world is for us here at home to act, to change our government, to hold on to what tiny, tiny shred of democracy we have. I don't have any illusions that we will have anything of a free election. It's already been bought and sold by
Right.
money, by these super
Right.
delegates, by all sorts of processes. But we do still have free speech for the most part, I guess, unless you're a Muslim or an African American man. But for the most part, we are able to speak out, and we need to use our voices because people in rural indigenous areas, like where Berta lives, cannot speak out very well. So when I travel around the world, which I do all the time because I work with social movements all over, people say to me, Bev, go home and work on your country. That's the most important thing you can do because what happens in your country
Yeah.
impacts all of us.
Would you say that the U.S. government or corporate-owned government is sort of the head of all of this coup that's taking place in all these countries?
No, not all countries, but you can certainly track quite a few that the U.S. has been involved in. It's not a secret.
And if the people do not step up to take the country back, to get money out of politics, what do you see happening?
Well, I can't go there. I mean, that's what we saw in Germany when people stopped protesting. All power and all tyranny came to be. That's certainly what could happen under Trump or under Clinton, because we've seen already, how attached she is to democracy. And to me, we don't need to think about the worst case scenario. To me, we just need to organize ourselves and continue to speak up and fight back and not cede the power, but keep claiming it for ourselves and for those around the world whose lives are completely messed over, if not blatantly taken away, like theirs was 2 days ago. They need the help of those with greater power because the problems don't originate in their country.
The School of the Americas Watch released a statement titled Human Rights Organizations Demand an Investigation of the Circumstances Surrounding the Assassination of Berta Caceres, and General Coordinator of the COPIN. And it said at approximately midnight last night, the general contractor of COPIN, Berta Caceres, was assassinated in her hometown of La Esperanza. At least 2 individuals broke down the door of the house where Berta was staying for the evening and shot and killed her. COPIN is urgently responding to this tragic situation. Berta was one of the leading indigenous activists in Honduras and spent her life fighting in defense of indigenous rights, particularly to land and natural resources. She had a parent who was her mother was an organizer also.
Yes, her mother, also named Berta Cáceres, and she is a remarkable woman. She is in her 80s now, probably her mid-80s. And she has led a life that is fiercely committed to transformation. She has been Berta's main mentor. She was a midwife, and many of the babies in the town of La Esperanza were born into her hands. She was also a single mother of many children, I think 9 or 10, raised them all by herself through income from being a midwife. She also was mayor of the village and governor of the state back in the day when women did not do either. And she is a fiercely committed leftist. And Berta spoke regularly about having grown up listening to Radio Martí out of Cuba and the Sandinista radio station out of Nicaragua, clandestinely, because it was illegal to hear this news from Honduras in those days. But her mother would take the children into an inner room, and they would all huddle together and listen to the broadcast. So Berta certainly grew up with this influence very early on, and she, when she became a little bit older, she became quite involved in supporting the struggle in El Salvador, and from there went on to start COPIN. So her entire life has been committed to the cause of justice.
It sounds like she had some really great training. We need more parents training their kids and raising them that way.
Yeah.
I just wanted to read this paragraph that's in the email from the Institute for Public Accuracy. Since 2009 military coup that was carried out by graduates of the U.S. Army School of the Americas, Honduras has witnessed an explosive growth in environmentally destructive mega projects that would displace indigenous communities. Almost 30% of the country's land was earmarked for mining concessions, creating a demand for cheap energy to power future mining operations. To meet this need, the government approved hundreds of dam projects around the country, privatizing rivers, land, and uprooting communities. Repression of social movements and targeted assassinations are rampant. Honduras has the world's highest murder rate. Honduran human rights organizations report there have been over 10,000 human rights violations by state security forces, and impunity is the norm. Most murders go unpunished. The Associated Press has repeatedly exposed ties between the Honduran police and death squads, while U.S. military training and aid for the Honduran security forces continues. So I like to, stress things because so many people in this country really do believe or want to believe that their government is looking out for them, that they're fighting these wars for the safety and protection of the people in this country, that the military is fighting for their freedom, and that's not the case. In many cases. I mean, in most cases.
Right.
Right. And so, what are your plans?
Well, they've actually shifted quite dramatically in the last 48 hours or so since this assassination happened against Berta, and since the other two people went into jail, as I told you, and since we have gotten notice that from Copine that there is going to be a tremendous ramp up in criminalization of them. So one of the men who is in jail now, the one I told you who was the sole witness, who is being held, it's ridiculous. He's a Mexican citizen. The consul of Mexico had demanded that he leave the country by 12 o'clock yesterday. They have gotten every shred of information they can get from him. They're actually basically torturing him. He was not allowed to sleep for 48 hours. He was not allowed to eat for 2 days. And he had to remain for a day and a half in the clothes that he had been wearing that was caked with the blood of Berta. They would not let him change his clothes. So he's on our board of directors, and we are working very hard right now to get him and the other man whom I mentioned released, and we anticipate that there is going to be a lot more similar repression. So we're trying to figure out how we can ramp up the support from our organization, Other Worlds, and how we can collaborate with other groups who are also very active to see how all together we can help keep the Honduran government from just going nuts now that they have killed Berta, and to keep the U.S. government from further aiding and abetting this completely vile and illegal and criminal behavior.
And so I'm just going to ask you, like, what help do you need exactly?
Well, we are going to be needing, actually, let me just interrupt here to say that, Cass, by the time your show goes on air, we might have the action alert from Copine that I could get you that will cite the specific actions. Please. So I'll just speak more generally now. There is a big need for funding. Excuse me. There is a big need for funding for Copine because they have a lot of work to do, you can imagine. And people can go to Rights Action, that is the organization Rights Action, and they will send the money down without taking any fee. And there is going to be an ongoing need for U.S. voices to rise up to call for the U.S. to cease funding the military in Honduras and, in fact, to cease funding the Honduran government at all, and to cease giving it political support. And as for what will be needed specifically, people can continue to go to our website to find out what political calls have been put out by COPIN. And our website is otherworldsarepossible.org. Again, that's otherworldsarepossible, all one word, .org.
And I did have just another question.
Okay.
What responses? Because I know that this has been this story and the death of Berta has been getting some news circulation. Like, are people stepping up to help? What are the chances of getting people held accountable and catching her murderers?
The chances are not good because, as Berta spoke about continually, there is total impunity in Honduras. And again, this gets the green light from the U.S. government all the time. But there is no accountability. Right. They can do whatever they like, yep. And no one is ever held accountable, very much like cops when they kill Black men in this society. It's yep. just like that. So I think that there is very little chance.
I hope to interview you again. I want to thank you, Beverly. Again, sure. It's Rights Action. Is it rightsaction.org?
I'm not sure. You could check. I'm not positive right now.
And
probably work. Mm-hmm.
Sorry. And otherworldsarepossible.org.
Correct.
And Berta's site is sorry, I'm looking for it over here. COPINH. It is a bit of a lengthy title when you know what all those letters are standing for. But again, it's COPINH. Can you say the full name of her organization?
Yes, the full name is the Civic Council of Popular and Indigenous Organizations of Honduras.
Okay. So again, thank you so much, Beverly Bell of otherworldsarepossible.org.
Great, Kath. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. You take good care of yourself.
You too. Bye.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.